The good thing is that Gavin Newsom got to keep his Senate seat, or governor seat, whatever it was. The California recall election had met a quick and decisive demise when California voters had resoundingly rejected efforts to recall the Democratic governor Gavin Newsom. The baseless accusations of voter fraud that poisoned the end of the recall campaign showed that the unfounded attacks on our elections are here to stay and they're not going to go away anytime soon. Apparently now you don't even have to wait for people to vote to claim a vote was tainted with fraud. Claims that the elections cannot be trusted do not begin with the former squatter Trump's baseless claims on our electoral process in 2020, and they certainly will not end with that election. Before the recall voting was finished and before votes were tabulated, a website for the leading Republican candidate in the recall election, conservative talk radio host Larry Elder, had claimed that statistical analysts had used to detect fraud in elections held in a third world nation, such as Russia, Venezuela, and Iran, have detected fraud in California, resulting in Governor Gavin Newsom being reinstated as governor. Not the case. And some great news for those wishing to make unfounded attacks on our elections. Apparently now, you don't even have to wait for people to vote to claim that a vote was tainted with fraud at all. Elder's campaign urged people to sign a petition reporting voter fraud that appears to be lifted from materials that were filed by one of Trump's biggest boosters in his failed attempt to overturn the 2020 election, the attorney Lin Wood. Yes, the same Lin Wood who has faced sanctions for his post-election litigation filings. The allegations of fraud in Elder's website linked to another site which asked voters to report fraud. Elder stated again without any basis that there might very well be shenanigans, as there was in the 2020 election, which there wasn't, but not one to be left out of the fake fraud allegation party. Trump in a statement chimed in, "Does anybody really believe that California recall election isn't rigged?" It wasn't. So yeah. While Elder's campaign committed a bit of snafu by posting allegations for voter fraud before voters were counted, his cynical strategy demonstrates a steady poisoning of a democratic process. Elder and all of the Republicans who stood behind Trump while he trumpeted false claims of election fraud, no, you don't have to be right to be believed. If a person in a position of power says something often enough, loudly enough, and for long enough, people will start to believe it. It's a dangerous lesson of politics 101. If you keep repeating the message will begin to form and hold. It's a And then also, it's a dangerous lesson of politics 101. If you keep repeating the message, that message will take hold of anything. The unfounded narrative that voter fraud perverts or pervades basically our elections has in fact taken hold of the Republican Party. 2/3 of the Republican voters believe the 2020 presidential election was stolen, which it wasn't. And this is despite no evidence to indicate voter fraud or election rigging, and despite the fact that every state and federal judge too seriously look at suits alleging voter fraud tossed out. Facts and legal decisions notwithstanding, Republicans accomplish a few ignorant goals, or important goals by pushing these false narratives. First, it gives them cover to propose and enact the strict voting laws that make it harder for certain voters, typically Democrats, to vote. And laws like those recently enacted in Georgia and Texas, which increase the barriers to entry for voters, do not serve a legitimate purpose. They serve to protect the last gasp of a political party that, based on demographics, is losing its power in a few key strongholds. Georgia voted for President Joe Biden and 2 Democratic U.S. senators. Texas almost sent Democrat bill of work to the U.S. Senate, but Republicans know that they are losing ground in politically important states and that the way to maintain power is to essentially pick your voters by making it harder for certain people to vote. And second, this false narrative of election fraud helps Republicans save face in the case of electoral defeat. Looking at Trump and Elder, clearly it is not that their message failed to resonate with the voters. It's that the voters, along with the unnamed election officials, joined together in a criminal conspiracy to undermine the election. Claims of election fraud allow Republicans to win even when they're fucking losing. But these baseless claims of fraud represent a high-stakes, dangerous game for Republicans. If they risk turning off the broad swaths of their voters, if elections cannot be trusted, then why would one take part in them? Republicans need to be careful to suppress the votes of the Democrats, but not members of their own party. Fighting off false accusations of voter fraud will be much more difficult than fighting off an effort to recall Newsom. Accusations of fraud will pervade our elections for as long as people believe them. In an echo chamber dominated media environment, it will be difficult to convince people that the lies that they have been told over and over again cannot be trusted. But this is the hard work we must do if we want our representatives and democracy to truly represent us. Okay. So if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel RBW King, and also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And thanks for listening.